Alright, so today we're jumping in with a few more updates from Bungie regarding the live game right now, and Bungie additionally speak about some future updates that we're getting, some of them coming next week. They also identify issues with Arms Week, the current event in the game. That's not really surprising, I suppose. We'll speak about the future of the new exotic mission, and then we'll get into some of the conversation over the past few days. With low player numbers right now in Destiny 2, there's a lot of talk about where Bungie go from here, between kind of course correction for the current game and conversation about what the alternatives would be, where obviously players would love to see D3, but based on what we know, that does not seem likely to happen. But there are a few bits of conversation in this one, guys, so if you want to stay up to date with more Destiny 2 stuff, feel free to hit the subscribe button. Otherwise, let's get into it. And first, for the Bungie updates, they say, we've resolved an issue that was introduced this week where the combatant power delta for match-made portal activities was unintentionally increased. These activity difficulties have been brought back to where they were prior to update 9.15. And if I'm not mistaken, I think we were running at an additional -10 delta for no apparent reason after the update this week, but Bungie do add, as a reminder, we'll be making additional changes to portal activity difficulty next week in update 9.151. Strangely, some of those changes will actually get us back to kind of the position we were in at the start of this week. So next week, challenge modifiers will no longer adjust your difficulty by -10 or 20. Instead, they'll only increase the projected score and add the described effect to the game. So we'll be able to choose modifiers based solely on their effects and score bonuses without worrying about combatant power. But new difficulty delta caps will be set for advanced, expert, master, grandmaster, and ultimate difficulties that are lower than what players were generally forced to play before when using challenge modifiers. And you can see those deltas on screen, so expert will be -15, master goes to -20, grandmaster -25, and ultimate -30. In terms of acquiring loot, DMG did point out separately, as some players are doing right now, instead of playing ultimate, they're putting more modifiers onto grandmaster activities in order to still earn things like tier 5 loot. But there's certainly anxiety that this is going to make activities actually feel harder than they do right now. It's quite exhausting continuously looking at all these numbers. I guess I'll just see how it feels next week, but I totally understand the concern. In separate updates though, for Arms Week, which is live right now, Bungie have said they've identified a problem where Arms Week event challenges are currently advertising incorrect reward totals. So, upon completion, players will earn 10 tokens per daily challenge and 90 tokens for the weekly challenge. I'm not sure if that's more or less than what's advertised, to be honest. I haven't even started with the Arms Week grind, as I've had a pretty busy week IRL. So let me know your experiences with that. I'll be trying to catch up in the next couple of days personally. Otherwise, Bungie are targeting a fix for next week, where season challenges are still not recognizing the collection of data pads in the game. Plus, in relation to the sandbox updates that we had at reset, Bungie actually had to update the patch notes in relation to On Your Mark for hunters. They say the patch notes have been updated to read that final blows at 10 stacks now cure you as intended. So that's the way it actually works. If anything, one of the best updates we had this week were actually the ability changes, which across the board are broadly pretty good, especially Warlocks and Titans. Probably coming out on top on the most part in terms of general potency. I've seen some bonkers builds with the updates that we've had this week. And otherwise, there's still been a lot of conversation about the exotic mission. As I said before, I thought it was a reasonably enjoyable piece of content in terms of something that I'm going to play, like 4 or 5 times to get the upgrades for the weapon and the catalysts. But I totally agree, it's not the most mind-blowing exotic mission we've ever had. Some players have said that's because it's short, and to be honest, I'd always lean into quality over quantity with these kinds of things, but I guess quality is an area where the mission kind of falls a bit short as well. It's the best piece of content we've had in Ash and Iron, arguably, and potentially one of the better pieces of content we've had since Edge of Fate, although the bar is pretty low there. In terms of falling short on quality, I guess, for this exotic mission, it's probably more about how unique and interesting it actually is, right? There's a lot of reused mechanics, reused music from Spire of the Watcher, and assets from that mission as well. There is a small kind of narrative component, although the story in Ash and Iron in general is very loose. And in some ways, the exotic mission kind of lacks finishing touches, right, in terms of additional dialogue, polish with regards to some of the encounters, the general atmosphere of the thing. It's not dreadful, but it's definitely a different bar versus what we've had in the past on the most part for a piece of content like this. If you'll be continuing to get upgrades for the axe though, with the axe arguably being the best part of it, it's a pretty good weapon really. This week we get the Attrition Orbs catalyst, which is pretty decent if you set up for it. Next week, I believe, we'll get Relentless Strikes based on the order here, and that will actually pair fairly well with the fact that light attacks on the weapon charge up the blade. Then there's Burning Ambition, which I'm assuming will be the week after. And the final catalyst for it is Subroutine Recursion, where Quicksilver Nanites grant more health the greater your stacks of Nano Assault, and taking damage while Nano Assault is active has the chance to generate nanites nearby, so it just kind of generally increases the potency of the nanites. So I look forward to those, and again, in terms of a piece of content I'll jump into and play maybe once a week. I don't have any absolutely massive complaints about it, but I understand the feedback and give me your thoughts below. The other thing I wanted to talk about here, there's been a lot of coverage of the recent Astacross video titled Destiny has hit rock bottom. Destiny Bulletin did some additional reporting here, and I completely agree and understand the general sentiment and what Cross was talking about in this video. As Destiny Bulletin points out, D2's in a rough space right now, and Steam data shows the game averaging just under 18,500 players over the past 30 days, which is the lowest average since launching in 2019 on Steam. Many longtime players feel the new systems are too grindy and complex. On top of that, the new content rollout lately has been smaller in scale compared to past expansions. I think it's becoming clear that one of the biggest mistakes Bungie have made with these new systems is this kind of soft sunsetting of so much of Destiny's content. Because while the portal is flawed, and while the new content we've had since Edge of Fate has many flaws, for the general health of the game, it's actually compounded by the fact that Bungie have made so much other content irrelevant and aren't really leveraging that content in any way to make the game more replayable and interesting in terms of replayability. But Astacross was speaking about this, where it kind of indicates the game probably only has two real options left. And in terms of something much better than what we have now, I'd be inclined to agree. So the first option, obviously, would be make Destiny 3. A true sequel, something with, big innovations, new game engine, all of that kind of stuff. Obviously, as we've been talking about for years at this point, would have always been the preference. I don't believe that that is likely to happen whatsoever. And two big reasons are obviously Bungie have lost a lot of staff, but they've also split those staff between Destiny and the other IP that they're trying to launch, which is Marathon. So that doesn't feel incredibly likely to happen, right? Cross's other suggestion was to make Destiny Classic. Now, this is something else that's been spoken about a lot, and there's definitely potential there. His suggestion was actually moving to something more similar to old school RuneScape, where development in general, new content and changes to the game will be more community driven, using things like in-game polls to decide updates, and then to run the game on more of a subscription model and ditch microtransactions. And a Destiny Classic version, if you like, does have a lot of potential because Bungie have content there in the bag already, which players would love to see. Although there would be a caveat there where, of course, there's lots of people who play Destiny who would rather that we get brand new stuff as opposed to rehashed things. And going the Destiny Classic route would obviously mean lots of rehashing and bringing back stuff that we had from D1 and D2 and kind of putting it into one brand new version of Destiny. It definitely could have potential though. Cross also talks about the fact that Bungie clearly understand things are bad right now. The fact that they've cancelled the seasonal power refresh and carrying over unstable cores into Renegades. While it might not seem like a big move, from our perspective, it probably is from Bungie's perspective because their systems for player retention, trying to hold on to an audience for Destiny, were actually heavily based around this power grind. So in that sense, it's a really big U-turn. Outside of these suggestions though, Bungie's third option would have been to simply not sunset most of the game, right? I'm not saying that that would get Destiny back to player numbers that we had 2 years ago or a year ago with Final Shape, but the fact that Bungie have kind of shoved so much stuff to the side, all of the old raids, destination content, campaigns, whatever it is, in favor of the portal, which has a very narrow set of activities to actually run, while also kind of taking away from the sense that Destiny is a big explorable solar system. Because that's another component of it, right? It takes the scale away from the game and the sense of purpose that destinations and specific activities actually had in the past. We've spoken about the fact that that was a mistake. And like I've said before, I think the portal is actually a good idea, but not in the way that it's been implemented right here. But the portal could have totally been a section at the bottom of the director screen that, instead of being all of the relevant content, could have just been the featured content for the week, right? Instead of saying, these old things are just totally irrelevant, Bungie could have said, this week, here are the raids, they're in Pinnacle Ops. There's some exotic missions in there with unique rewards tied to them, right? You'd still have the option to go and play on other destinations or play non-featured raids. And if Bungie had added the tiering system for rewards into all of the other content, it would have actually given players a reason to go back and play that stuff again. Even now, in terms of supporting the live game, that would have been another option. If as part of Ash and Iron and these kind of mid-season updates, whatever they're called, Bungie slowly reintroduced stuff from the rest of the game. Again, I'm not saying it's like game-saving territory, but it would have been a way to add more content in that is relevant at a faster cadence with a little bit of new stuff thrown in. I imagine that part of the reason Bungie haven't been able to do this is because they're also dropping 2 expansions a year. I might be mistaken here, but I also feel like Renegades is kind of going to get the lion's share of the attention for this particular year of Destiny. Looking at the marketing that Bungie have put together for it, the teams that are actually working on it, which seem to consist far more of the teams that were very prevalent when the Final Shape was being created, for instance. Again, I might be wrong yet, but I feel like a lot of resources are going into that release, which will also have taken away from the stuff we got on Kepler in Edge of Fate and even potentially live update things that we've had mid-season with Ash and Iron. So there's probably a part as well where Bungie are actually stretched because of this new release cadence. And in a way, that might turn out to be an okay thing if Renegades is really, really good, but even then, Renegades will exist in a bubble where players will, maybe enjoy it for a month. Then we will have absolutely rinsed all of the content within it, and we'll be back to the Portal as it stands right now. So unless Bungie can fundamentally get the core of the game to a better place, I feel like at best we're going to have a good month followed by 4 or 5 months, which are immensely quiet. So that's my 2 cents on it. Whether Bungie will go any of these routes with developing something like a Destiny Classic, time will tell, but I don't think it's personally very likely. And it's clear based on the resources they had that it's been a mistake to additionally sunset so much of the stuff that has been relevant. Nonetheless, it's an interesting conversation and I'd love to get your thoughts. Would a Destiny Classic, if Bungie were able to do it, would that be interesting to you? Obviously, most of us would love a D3, but again, Bungie scrapped that concept years ago. And even if they chose to do it now, it would be years away from any kind of potential release. So that's it for today, guys. That's a conversation we've got. We'll have further updates in the Twid, so we'll see what Bungie say. In terms of anything groundbreaking, obviously we're waiting for this roadmap. I'd like to think that Bungie could make some big swings there in a much better direction, but just based on how things have been over the last 3 months, I'm not convinced that that's going to happen. I wish I could say something other than that, but it's up to Bungie. We'll see what they have to say. If you found the video interesting, a rating really does help us out. Again, give us your thoughts down below. Otherwise though, thanks for watching, and I hope you guys have an awesome day.